In my kitchen chats this week, one thing that's been constantly coming up is that idea of what do you do with your house if you are restricted by walls? Because on the call, we were talking with one of my Dream Kitchen Design School clients about the fact that she spent all of this time on Pinterest finding all of these beautiful images, trying to pull together the vision for her new kitchen, only to create this amazing board that looks incredible. But when she went back and started looking at the plans of her current home, because she is not building a new space, all they are doing is renovating an existing space. Once she took everything that she'd spent hours, I actually think probably months, saving plenty of ideas on, went and looked at her plan, she realized that all these big aspirational images that I'm sure you've seen on Instagram, on Pinterest, of beautiful kitchens with big long island benches, plenty of bench space, lots of, walkways and built-in cupboards and storage galore. What this lady realized this week was, while aspirational and amazing to gather all of this insight, nothing that she could find was actually going to fit the restrictions that she has in her current home unless she had the budget to make major structural changes, get rid of walls, change doors, change windows. And the reality is that with the cost of renovating and construction right now in Australia, that is quite cost prohibitive. So getting very clear and realistic on what she and her family can afford. She is restricted by walls, restricted by a door and a window, has two small children, and needs to be able to come up with a plan for her kitchen that's going to work, that's going to fit within her budget, and still allow them as a family of four to live at home. What we did was we took a look at her plan, and I gave her some really good insight into what she could do within the existing space to actually bring those visions to life. And I'm going to walk you through that now. Let's take a look at their existing plan. This is an existing plan. Now, this might not look like anything you're working on, but I want you to just remember that this is an existing home. This family, while they have quite a bit of budget to spend, they are not investing in getting rid of walls, moving doors, changing windows because they've just had all of their windows redone, or moving the actual location of the kitchen. The budget that they have right now will really support them to put in everything that they need in the kitchen without having to redo the entire home. Let's take a look at this kitchen, 1960s. If you are in Australia, you will know that this is a pretty standard basic kitchen that was built in those days. And it's still a pretty functional kitchen, but lots of modern day appliances won't work in this space. I'm going to walk you through what this kitchen currently has, what works, what doesn't work. And I'm also going to take you through the big vision for this family, because as a family of four, there's a lot that this kitchen can't do for them, and there's huge restrictions on how they can live in this space. Let's talk about the brief of this client. Family of four, two of the things that are really important to them in this kitchen is a pantry, because there is not one, a proper space for a bin, a dishwasher, somewhere where the family can gather, or at least the two young children can sit at a space in the kitchen, and storage. What lets this kitchen down is there is absolutely no storage in this space, and half of the storage is unusable because of where the current fridge and bin live. Let's take a look at what is in this kitchen and the pinch points that we're dealing with when it comes to this design. Right here, we have the location of the fridge, but next to the fridge, there is a blank space. So this is just a fridge standing in the space, not a built-in fridge and not a really wide fridge. It's only 700 wide. The fridge is sitting there, and then right next to the fridge is a bin, because there's nowhere else in this kitchen for that bin to live. If we come around the corner, let's look at what's happening in this corner. So you can see having the bin here means that The cupboard underneath the bench that lives in this location is now inaccessible. That is just dead storage underneath the bench top. Let's talk underneath the bench top first. In this location, we have one drawer and one cupboard. When we come around to here, the same thing. We have one drawer and one cupboard. If we come around to this section, we actually have two drawers, so one in each area, and two cupboards. I think you're starting to understand that there is a very, very limited amount of storage in this kitchen. And underneath the sink here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 cupboards. So in total, we have 4 drawers, 12 cupboards. And when I say cupboards, it is a cupboard door with just one shelf inside. So very, very, very limited. That's what's going on underneath the bench top. Let's now bring in another layer and take a look at what's happening on top of the bench top. I'm just going to get rid of this here. On top of the bench top, a big thing for this family is bench space. And if we take a look at what's going on in this kitchen, we can see that the only areas that we have accessible bench space would be here, here, and here. We can also see that right here, we have a really big sink that has a drainer on either side. And this is a big, massive built-in stainless steel sink that is essentially acting as a bench top in that area. So if we look at this in more detail, we can see that here and here, we are losing at least half a meter of bench space with these big drainers that are in the space. This family also has a microwave that sits here. So we've lost that part of the bench space, and then their kettle and their toaster live here. So this bench space is completely gone. There's no preparation area there. This family also has an air fryer that lives here. So again, we've lost another crucial area of bench space. So in terms of getting things prepped for making dinner, packing school lunch boxes, and all of those things, we only have two very small areas of bench space that are usable. Now, where does the family store all their food, you ask? Well, this lucky family has to leave the kitchen. They have to walk around. There's a big long walkway here, and then there is a linen cupboard here that they currently use as their pantry storage. So it's almost like a modern day scullery without it being a scullery because it's in the middle of the main corridor of the home. It's very impractical. It's really out of the way, and it's a massive cause of frustration for this family. Let's talk about what else is happening in this area. So this is the dining room, and then through here, adjacent to that, is the living space. And this door connects outside to a big veranda and the backyard. Now, there is a plan at some point that this door and the window next door to it will be turned into a sliding door, but for now, they're going to keep it as it is and make that decision down the track. So if we take a look at this in detail, as I've just shown you, we can see that the things that are missing are, I haven't mentioned a dishwasher, I haven't mentioned a pantry, really, really significant lack of storage, absolutely nowhere for them to store things. This family has a tall unit that sits back here in the dining space that acts as their, I guess, cutlery and crockery station, but it's really frustrating. The space is not tiny. There is still enough room in this kitchen for it to function properly. The problem is that in the 1960s, modern families weren't really considered. The thing that was thought about was, oh, can I access fridge, cooktop, and sink really easily? Yeah, I probably can. There was no thought process about how you would move through the space. There was no thought process about storage and things like that. The final thing that I'll mention before we talk about what we implemented to get this kitchen to work is the cooktop. Now, the cooktop sits here, and this is a freestanding cooktop that has an oven underneath. Simple, it does the job. We do understand that because this family has a priority of building in a pantry, that we will probably use a similar cooktop or a similar idea in the new design. So let's take a look at that now. Okay, here is the new plan. We can see with this plan that while it looks similar and things might be in a very similar location as they were before, we have access to more storage, more bench space, and a really clean area for kids to sit in the kitchen while, breakfast is being made, lunches are being prepared, dinner's being made. So let me talk you through what's going on and the big decisions we made in this kitchen. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start with this wall again back here. What we've been able to do is put a fridge in, so a built-in fridge. We've been able to build in a pantry. Now, this is one of those pantries where you open the door and then it has all of those amazing pull-out drawers inside. It's a 600 wide pantry and an 800 wide fridge. So adequate enough for a family of 4 to be able to store food, plus have plenty of additional storage space as well. Inside this cupboard on the end, and this family is still deciding whether they do a bifold door, a flip up door, a roller door, or keep it open, but this is a designated appliance space. So this is where they can keep their microwave up on a shelf. They can put their kettle, their toaster, and anything else that may have been sitting out on the bench. What this means having an appliance space is we have been able to give back to the clients. And that looks like this. We've been able to give back bench space in all of these areas that we did not have access to it before. And if we slide over and look at what we had before, you can see the difference in how much of that highlighted green we now have in the new plan. So much more bench space. If we take a look at what's going on underneath the bench, before we were very limited in the amount of storage space we could access in this kitchen. This is what we have now in this space. So under here, we now have 3 drawers. We now have the same thing under here. And all of these are those really great full extension drawers that come out. The bench top in this version as well, I will say, is 700 millimeters deep, which means that this appliance cupboard is 700. This is 600. I'll put these in. Whereas in the original, the bench top, the depth of the bench top was only 500. So we have been able to give them extra bench space as well in terms of depth in their kitchen. Under here, if we move on and we're continuing to talk about what we're doing underneath the bench, we've got 3 drawers here, 3 drawers here. And as a bonus to service the dining room where this family can put placemats, table linen, any of those kinds of things, we were able to, in this dead corner here, add another amount of drawers. But here we have 4 drawers. And that's split up into 4 equal drawers. And the top drawer we would add PowerPoints to so that that becomes a charging area. And what that means is instead of having phones and laptops and iPads sitting on the bench top, they can all fit in this really, really big drawer. So this drawer would be 700 millimeters wide by 700 millimeters deep. So it's a really big area inside that drawer for a massive charging station in the top drawer. And then the 3 drawers below that are more than sufficient to house tablecloths, placemats. They've also said that they will potentially put in the bottom drawer things for the dog, leads, poo bags, so that when they're going on a walk, it's in a really easy, accessible location. So very, very smart. If we continue to look at what else is going on underneath the bench, in this zone here at the sink, we have 3 drawers. So look at all these drawers we have. We've managed to get a bin built in underneath the bench top. And yes, it looks skinny, but you can get a 450 wide integrated dishwasher from Miele, and that is what we've put in here. So that is a 450 millimeter wide. So it's 150 millimeters smaller than a normal full size dishwasher. It still takes, I think, 10 or 12 place settings. So you're not really losing a lot compared to a full size dishwasher. And the reason we've gone for the 450 is so that the family can still have 2 big double sinks. They can still fit a bin and they can fit the dishwasher. We then didn't have to compromise on what we were putting underneath there. When we look at this, we've now got 19 drawers, which is incredible. Plus, we also have 7 pull-out drawers inside the pantry. When you start to look at this and you think about what it was to begin with and what we've done now, it's far more efficiently designed. The client is able to use the space really well, and I will talk you through the flow of the space in a minute. But you can also see that there's things that aspirationally this client probably wanted a wider cooktop, big 900 wide cooktop, but that would mean a significant reduction in storage underneath the bench. So they were quite happy to compromise on going with a cooktop that is 600 wide, a freestanding cooker. But we found a brand that is a 600 wide cooker and underneath has 2 ovens. And that allowed them to have a bit more flexibility with cooking and the way that they want to use the kitchen without us having to knock out this wall and extend the kitchen and give them far more space. So remember, we are keeping this contained within the boundary of what we already have. Now, the final thing on this kitchen that we have been able to add, which we didn't have in the previous kitchen, is overhead storage. So above these cabinets down here, these cabinets now go all the way to the ceiling. And there is really good functional overhead storage. And while it's not practical for everyday use, up in those cupboards is where they can keep vases, that old champagne bucket that you pull out once a year, big items like platters, cake stands, or 3-tiered stands that you get given from people and no one really ever uses. Now, so that we can access that overhead storage, there's no overhead storage here, but the range hood would be an integrated range hood, and then there would be overhead storage in this location that runs all the way to the wall. Again, giving them not deep overhead storage, more shallow storage, but still giving them a space where they can keep all their wine glasses or drinking glasses or coffee mugs, all of those things that potentially might not want to put in a drawer, but something that's still in easy reach and easily accessible. When we look at this kitchen, we've more than tripled the amount of storage that they have, plus we've given them a pantry. So we've probably quadrupled the amount of storage within this space. We've freed up more than 2 times the bench space that they had before, given them functional zones in the kitchen, pantry, appliance area, and given them a space for charging so that their bench top can be kept nice and clean. Now, the last thing that I haven't spoken about is giving back this seating area. It's not huge, but it is big enough to have 2 seats there or 2 stools so that the kids can be within the area. It is providing that connection. It's providing that space within the kitchen that was really important to this family. And the key is when we look at spaces like this, while it's really nice to find pictures on Pinterest or Instagram and be having that inspirational or that aspirational content that's getting you excited about your design, what is important though is to get realistic about what you have in your space. all of those pretty pictures that this particular client was looking at, the beautiful marbles, the lovely detailing on the cabinet work, they can all absolutely still work. But the idea of the big, long, sweeping island bench and a huge wall with a giant appliance cupboard, it's just not realistic because they do not have the space for it. So when you break it down and you start to look at what you have and work within the bounds of your space, you can create a space that still works for you, but you have to think smarter and make those slight compromises. So there's no sense in this kitchen putting ovens built into the wall because then we can't have a pantry. And there would be no sense in turning this into a 1.2 meter wide freestanding cooker because then we lose storage space. So it is about that comfortable negotiation of, well, I'm still getting the ovens and the induction cooktop that I wanted. I'm not getting ovens built into a wall. However, I now have a pantry, and that's the biggest win for the space. If we come back to the original plan now and we look at the flow of the space, those pinch points that we had, the access that was blocked, we can see the frustration that was going on in this kitchen. The fridge, while in an okay location, being located towards the end of the kitchen so that the kids can kind of come in, grab something and go. When you open the door of the fridge, we're now blocking access into where the bin is. We're now blocking the cooktop, and it's creating a real pinch point in the space. We also know that we've lost storage because we can't access the cupboard because of where a bin is sitting. We also know because of the shallow bench tops that the cooktop protrudes. So we have another pinch point in the space. If I'm standing here cooking and someone wants to access the bin, I then have to get out of the way so that they can get into the bin and then I can move back. So it's causing conflict in the space for absolutely no reason. We also have this huge sink that's preventing us from having better storage and more bench space. It's also taking up so much room that we can't fit in a dishwasher, we can't fit in an integrated bin, and it's just a bit of a pain. The fact that we don't have a lot of storage in here and that we don't have a pantry is also a pain. But when we look at the flow of the space, yes, we have some bench top here where preparation can happen right next to cooking. That is a tick. That means you can lay things out and cook. But because we have things sitting on this bench top, again, we are really restricting the amount of space or the amount of area where we can spread out. And not having a dishwasher means that the flow for this family is really frustrating because things pile up here. If you're cooking here and you want to take something and set it down somewhere, we have something on the bench here, we have something on the bench here. We're really limited with where we go. So we either have to come over and precariously try and find somewhere for it to go there, or move the drying rack off this space here and set it down there. It's quite dysfunctional. It's really annoying for this family. And one of their biggest problems was the flow of how they work in the space. The other problem in this kitchen is that because everything is a cupboard and involves a door being open and someone actually having to get down on their hands and knees to find what they need in there, if cupboard doors are open and I'm trying to make lunch here, I'm constantly having to get out of the way so that things can be accessed from those cupboards. And it's just a cause of frustration because there's no really good space where they can go, get things organized, pack bags, and have things done without having to completely move out of the way. With a drawer, you can step back, access the drawer, step forward. With a cupboard, you've got to open the cupboard door, get all the way down, and try and figure out what's going on. The pinch points in this space, having this that blocks this location, not being able to open the oven if someone is accessing the fridge, not being able to get to the bin if someone is cooking, not being able to get to the bin if someone opens the door, not being able to get to the microwave if someone is cooking. It's just a real difficult situation. And then the fact that there's no dishwasher, there's these big areas on here. This is normally full of dishes. This is normally full of dishes that are clean and draining. So access to bench space down that end is also a real pain. When we look at the new plan, and we know that the doors here are far smaller, I can stand here. Someone can come in and access the fridge. Someone can also come in and access the bin, and you don't have to move or interrupt the cooking. The other benefit of the flow of this space is if I'm cooking and I need to access spices, any utensils, I can stand here, open a drawer on either side, and grab what I need. We also know that in this design, the oven door is not going to block the fridge or the bin. We've also been able to give this family, for when they're preparing food, locations and areas in the kitchen where things can happen. Bench space with access to the bin, bench space with access to drawers where they can keep things that they need to be preparing lunches. We've also got a pantry that services the kitchen. I think the other benefit of this space is now that we've got rid of that giant sink with those big drainers, again, if you are at the sink, the flow of the space is so much easier. Instead of having to go from the other option from sink to bin, back to sink to bin, we don't have to do that anymore. We can stand here, we can scrape dishes in the bin, and then just load them straight into the dishwasher. This is a really good example to get you thinking about what you might need to think about in your home, the kinds of questions that you need to start asking yourself in terms of how do we live? What is important to us in our home? If we were to keep our kitchen in the existing location, what could we achieve? What would that mean in terms of the dream kitchen that I have to release or let go of? Does that mean that built-in ovens on a wall is maybe something for down the track? And right now I am using an oven under bench, or I'm going with a freestanding oven. These are decisions that you can make that can still allow you to create that beautiful dream kitchen, but with a comfortable compromise that can still create the flow and the way of living in your space that you really want. If this is starting to resonate with you and it's something that you want to look at more of, or you want to see more kitchens like this, you can click the link below to take a look at my kitchen vault, or you can come and join me inside the Dream Kitchen Design School. Any questions, drop them in the comments or head over to Instagram and send me a DM. I love looking at people's kitchens. It's what I do almost every day, and I would love to hear how you are maybe implementing some of this in your kitchen, or let me know if there's anything that you are thinking about when it comes to your kitchen that you might currently be stuck on, or you're not sure if it's the right compromise to make.